Right, welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be looking at a lot of information, all from Zack Snyder on one interview he did with fellow YouTuber Grace Randolph of Beyond the Trailer. And I've got to say, goddamn, kudos to Grace Randolph for getting that interview. That genuinely is amazing. So obviously she's from Beyond the Trailer if you want to check out her channel and the interview. I'll leave a link down below, but we're going to run through what I consider to probably be some of the most important elements of it that I think most people will find interesting. Now, first and foremost, it is topical. Okay, we're talking about coronavirus, or at least COVID-19. And Zack Snyder discussed the challenges of finishing the movie during a pandemic. Now, it was announced during the pandemic. Now, the reason why I want to talk about it, because I know a lot of people will be like, oh, talk about the pandemic, whatever. I think it just shows the commitment from AT&T. You know, announcing it during a pandemic, right? We're going to announce it during the pandemic. Very clearly, in his response to this question and kind of discussing it all, AT&T, they're almost like devout. You know, they are devoted to finishing this in the best possible way. So he was asked about it, obviously, and he says, you know, it's challenging, but I'll be honest about our working situation in that it's pretty efficient. I have editorial upstairs, and then downstairs we have like a screening room, so we can watch the dailies and watch the visual effects as they come in. My editor and I have this amazing sort of mirrored editing system, so I can see exactly what she's doing. It's really an amazing technological setup. The problem is you can't leave it, right? It's literally in the house. It's the crack of dawn until the wee hours, and we're just working on it. Until the kids come and drag me out, we're pretty much in there. Now, again, like I say, I think this firmly shows the commitment from AT&T, and I'm sure most people would agree with me, right? That is fantastic news. And I think it's interesting because it shows like a wide variety in terms of the fact that we're getting, you know, all this new Matt Reeves business, this new sort of DC universe, whilst also a very clear commitment for the old. Now, we've heard rumours that there's some kind of shake-up in the company, old factions, new factions. It could be the case. I think this adds a little bit more fuel to that fire as well. But hey, AT&T, very clearly committed, announcing it during a pandemic, clearly working on it during a pandemic. I mean, goddamn, super, super interesting. Now, next up, we've got the Batman. Of course, Matt Reeves is directing the Batman. He's written the Batman, which is Robert Pattinson. So it's a far cry from the Zack Snyder universe. And he was asked about it. I mean, obviously. So he says, you know, look at what Matt's doing with Batman. And, by the way, I'm super excited about that. I think he's an amazing filmmaker, and I think it's going to be great, and Robert's cool. Now, obviously, that's essentially, you know, we're talking about Affleck, you know, deciding to walk away from the role of Batman, and Matt Reeves, you know, bringing it forward. Now, he was asked in terms of his thoughts on The Dark Knight's big screen future. So he was talking about whether he thinks Ben Affleck's going to come back, and that does seem to be, you know, a topic that some people are interested in, and I find it, I don't know, I find it surprising as well as, you know, interesting nonetheless. But what do you guys think of that? You know, I guess it's not massive news. You know, Zack Snyder gives the seal of approval, but I think it's interesting to sort of hear and see his reaction to the question, because is it indicative of no plans for Ben Affleck to come back despite the rumours? You know, I think that's the main point I wanted to drive home there. Now, we have some comments from, well, Zack Snyder, basically on the biggest challenges with finishing his cut of the movie. And I think he was pretty professional, to be honest. You know, he says, I think really the big pressure on me is just for it, Justice League, to be exactly true to itself. And I know that sounds obvious, but we as storytellers and as filmmakers, a lot of times there's a lot of different powers that push and move and change what you're doing as you're doing it. But I think with this process and this project, it really is an amazing opportunity just to, and what I think the fans want, just do what I think the fans want. It's just a very pure and exact version of the movie, basically. And this, remember guys, we're going to tie it in with the comments about COVID-19, the very clear backing from AT&T, it being announced during a pandemic, and you know, the fact that it would appear Ben Affleck's not coming back. I think AT&T, this is like Zack Snyder's swan song from the DC EU. It's a case of, hey, we're going to let you do whatever you want. Because can you imagine if AT&T meddled in the Snyder Cut of the Justice League? the uproar that would be inflicted upon the world is just insane. But again, super interesting and is very much indicative of a very smart move by AT&T, just merely taking it and going, hey, here you go, do what you want, just crack on, son. Now, moving on, we have an interesting question basically about Zack Snyder addressing Superman Achiever's pinnacle in the Snyder Cut. Right? So, in terms of what happened, so talking about making the character more relatable, Snyder explained that there's a certain responsibility with bringing the most iconic of DC's heroes to the big screen. Now, you tell me, we'll read this, and you tell me whether you think that Zack Snyder gets Superman. Superman is such an abstract character in his powers and what he's able to do. Anytime you can kind of bring him back down to earth, he becomes a lot more relatable, and for that, he's more interesting. Huge respect for his moral code, and I think his ultimate place as the top of the pyramid of the DC Universe world. In the end, he has to achieve that pinnacle. I always felt like that was what I was doing. Now, like with the resurrection sort of theme, concept, you know, who he is, who is he now? Sorry, what is he? When you touch the eternal, in the sense that coming back from the grave, how are we changed by that? Now, I think this shows that he definitely has an understanding for the character of Superman, but I also think, you know, it also shows what could have been. Fundamentally, you know, a larger portion, and also, again, just as an FYI, what will be, because we're getting the Snyder Cut. So it's all to do with, you know, this theme of resurrection. You know, I guess, well, birth, death, and rebirth. He has birthed, deathed, and rebirthed a few times. We had him born, him believing he's a human, being raised, you know, and then essentially died. And then kind of reborn when he discovered the fact that he was, you know, an alien, and then he died again, and then was quite literally reborn. So I think that's very interesting, but I am also very reluctant to say that, yeah, definitely he's going to go into that much depth, and it's going to be really that iconic and sort of, I guess, that existential. So, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. You know, I guess the question there was really, do you think that Zack Snyder actually understands the character or not? For me, I'd say yeah, but he hasn't had, you know, well, in that aspect anyway, relatability is definitely important, and bringing him down to earth gets that relatability. But I don't think he's been given the chance to actually flex or fully expand upon the concepts that he wanted to explore. Now, last but not least, before we wrap up this video, Justice League. Zack Snyder comments on his movie's place in the wider DC Extended Universe. Interesting. Now, this article starts as follows. A lot has changed in the DC Extended Universe since Zack Snyder was working on Justice League, and films like Aquaman, Shazam, and Harley Quinn Birds of Prey have pointed to Warner Brothers having moved on from the storylines in place by the filmmaker during those early years. When Zack Snyder's Justice League arrives on HBO Max in early to mid-2021, it's unlikely to affect future movies set in the DCEU. Instead, the movie, limited series, is almost certainly going to be standalone in nature, and Snyder himself has now clarified how it fits into the larger picture. What say you, pray tell, doth pray tell? So basically it says, look, frankly, the DC Cinematic Universe has branched like a tree and blossomed and grown in amazing and great ways. But for me, where Justice League falls, I believe that it really sort of represents its own path. It kind of separates now from the DC Cinematic Universe continuity, and I think that's a good thing. Basically saying, hey, don't expect any more. We're not really going to be doing any more. This is kind of like the one and done, sort of. That's all we're going to be doing. Now, as a little bit of a bonus tease, we do have one last snippet of information. Justice League director Zack Snyder teases new footage this week with Snyder Cut's mammoth runtime. Okay, so he says, I may show a clip, and it is a small clip. It may be a small clip. Also, maybe there's another tiny little amount. Just a little thing for the fans. The clip is, that's going to be fun. I famously teased the runtime at 114 minutes. Now, in its current state, it's going to end up being longer than that yet. Christ alive. So it's exciting to be bringing all of this material to the fans. They get to see all these crazy and awesome new sequences, and I think that's going to be really exciting for everyone. I think it's good. I just think it's surprising. This is a man who definitely likes to share stuff anyway. He was sharing stuff on Vero, so it's no surprise that he wants to share more and more things. But hey, look, I hand on over to you. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comment section. If you are new here, do hit subscribe. Stay up to date on the world of pop culture movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Again, props to Grace Randall for getting that interview. That is fantastic work. But anyway, thanks so much. Take care.